We're going to watch our final talk in Holy Landscapes together now, but before we watch that, we've got a quote that Evie and Amos are going to read to us, and you'll see it on your screen now.
From beginning to end, the Bible tells a story that is geographically grounded. The Bible tells a story that is always somewhere.
The Basic Bible Atlas by John A. Beck.
Welcome to our Holy Landscape series. Today we're thinking about homes. We've had a great fun together, I hope, on this design here, as we've looked at gardens and we've looked at trees, we've looked at oceans and deserts and mountains and valleys and fields and rivers and caves and beaches, past towns, temples, and today we're looking at homes. Guys, come here now. I'm trying to do the talk. It's been 14 weeks, and look at you now. Well, you get that side of me so you're not near each other. Are you arguing?
No. No.
Right, now listen to this. I love the design of this that we've done, but one thing I love even more is those home shows. Those shows about different homes, like Grand Designs, Tiny House Nation, George Clark's Amazing Spaces. I love it when you see the rubble or an old place being transformed into a home in which people live. It's absolutely fantastic. Is that good to listen to?
Mm-hmm.
Right, don't argue again. At my last church, there was a lady and she had 2 teenage daughters, and whenever she was grumpy or angry with them, they would say to her,
"Please use your Sunday church face, Mum." What does that mean?
"Please use your church Sunday face, Mum." What does it mean? It basically means when she was at church, she was all smiles and lovely and happy with everyone, like so many of us are, let's be honest, I'm not knocking her. But when she was at home, that's when you saw the real her. I think sometimes, if you're like me, I can forget that the early church met in people's homes. To be sure, they met in the synagogue and then had a little bit of worshipping Jesus on the side in secret so that the Jewish worshippers of the Old Testament didn't get that, but they were kicked out of the synagogues in about AD 90, and so all they did was meet in homes. Are you listening to me?
Mm-hmm.
You sure?
Yes.
What did I say? You didn't know, did you? Right, listen now, I'm going to pull those ears clean off your face. They met in homes, and whoever was the owner of that home was the leader of that church, which I find interesting because many of those homes were owned by women, like, for example, Lydia. She was the leader of that church in Philippi. If you look at the book of Acts, it says, just some examples, house to house, chapter 2, verse 46, house to house, chapter 5, verse 42, house after house, 8, verse 3, Cornelius's house, 10, verse 22, Mary's house, 12, verse 12, Jailer's house, 16, verse 32, Lydia's house, 16, verse 40, Titius Justus's house, 18, verse 7, and house to house, chapter 20, verse 20. And let's not forget Paul's other letters either. He says that Priscilla and Aquila's house, that was in Romans 16, verse 5, and in 1 Corinthians 16, verse 19, Nympha's house in Colossians 4, verse 15, and Philemon's house in Philemon chapter 1, verse 2. Do you remember all of those? Because you're going to be tested on them later. No, I'm only kidding. But the point is, the early church met in people's homes. Where did they meet?
In people's homes.
Well done. Very good. You were listening that time. In her book, Some Things You Just Have to Live With, Musings on Middle Age, Barbara Cawthorne Crafton writes about when her daughter and teenage granddaughters came to live with her and her second husband, who wasn't their actual grandfather, for 6 weeks in between their house move. She says this: "Often they are not where we think they are. We prepare a dinner and they are nowhere to be found. Ask one to get up and get ready for school and return 10 minutes later to the same motionless lump. Why do adolescents have to be at school so early? They should start their school day at noon and stay there until 6. We tell them to do something and they forget. They eat cookies and then don't want their dinner. They watch too much television. They need something and forget to tell us, necessitating a special trip to the store, back to the school in mid-morning. They are thoughtless, her husband says. I think back, well, yes, I suppose they are. Mine were teenagers more recently than his were. Maybe his weren't thoughtless. These two are like mine. What goes around appears to be coming around, just like they always say it does. They are thoughtless, says her husband, but he gets into the car and goes anyway. We have summit meetings around the dinner table about the issues that come up when a number of people live together in the same not-so-enormous house. The idea is that we all first express appreciation for something they have done well and then talk about things that need to happen differently. We do this better sometimes than we do at other times. Sometimes it seems our litany of things that should be different, glasses that need to be put in the dishwasher, clothing that needs to be hung up, shopping lists that need to be updated, this, that, it is so much too long. We drone on and on with it, and I can see their eyes glaze over. Right now, for instance, I can't remember what the appreciation we expressed this evening was about exactly. I think we may have left it out. Their presence is oddly tiring. The television is in my office, and I find it harder to write when they are watching it than I used to when I was younger. This makes me sad. It seems that I should be able to always rejoice in the presence of children I love so much, but this is unrealistic. They do not always rejoice me. Nobody always rejoices in anybody except God, I suppose, and even God must become annoyed with us sometimes. When mine were little, I used to escape them by rising early to study and write. It was self-defence. When they were awake, I was fair game. I developed a permanent early rise habit, one that has served me well ever since. Probably I will revert to it tomorrow, so I can be theirs when they need me. Probably the silence of the early morning will draw me from our warm bed into my tiny office. Probably I will realise, as I realised long ago, that I can do both, be a mum and be a person of prayer and study. Or perhaps they won't need me, because I am a mum, but not their mum. They have a mum. I'm their grandmother. I'm not the central figure in their lives. I'm the one on the edges. A grandmother swoops in now and then and makes things better if she can. A grandmother is an extra pair of hands for a mother or a father. A grandmother is another head. A grandmother brings history with her. She must never do any of these things explicitly, though. She must give her gifts invisibly, for the young need to feel that their wings are unfolding naturally, that they are travelling on their own road at their own pace, not being dragged along someone else's road. Nobody wants her advice, not if it's presented as advice. Nobody wants the lessons of her history if they're presented as lessons. People don't always want her recipes, not if they're presented as the only right ones. People want to try things for themselves, the way the grandmother did when she was young. So the grandmother must sit on her hands often, while things that one might have predicted would turn out poorly. And sometimes she notices that they don't turn out poorly at all, that they turn out rather well, better than it looked like they would when she was still trying to micromanage them. And sometimes she's flattered by a sudden flush of accomplishment. They like her pie crust. They like her silver. They think something she said is funny. They go through the house and put round stickers on all the things they want to inherit when she dies. This is great fun. She remembers rock and roll songs from when they came out the first time. They are impressed at this. She remembers music their mother liked when she was a teenager. They like this music too, in a way, oldies, they call it. She remembers wishing for a boyfriend and not having one. She remembers firmly believing she would never have a boyfriend, and also believing that she would be the only girl in history who would never grow breasts, who never menstruated. She would be a freak. She remembers that youth is not always a delight for the young. She remembers the pain of not measuring up to the standards that she knew, even at the time, to be superficial. She remembers doing stupid things for no good reason. She remembers acting against what she knew was best for her, doing things she knew were wrong out of her longing to fit in with other people. She remembers thinking she could do things she could not do, thinking things would not hurt her the way they hurt other people, She remembers being angry when these things were pointed out to her. They think I'm stupid, she muttered to herself. I'm not stupid, my granddaughter says scornfully when I'm trying to warn her against something dire. No, you're so bright you scare me, but you are so young. Families are quite complicated, aren't they? Guys! Evie, Amos! Come on! Cut that. We'll do that again, okay? So take 2. Okay, ready? Take 2, okay. Guys! Evie and Amos!
Father.
Oh, Father and Papa, great. Right, I need to have a butternut squash to do, please. Can you get me the butternut squash? Can you get me a potato peeler and a sharp knife? Potato peeler. It's in this second drawer there, yeah? Get it out. Open your eyes, you might actually see something in the change. Can you get that? That's it, well done. Give me a sharp knife, please. Please don't stab you or your sister with it. Alright? That's it, actually, it's better if Evie gets it. Thank you. Well done, guys. Cheers, you can go away now. Now, Jesus lived in a home. Thank you. Jesus lived in... Goodbye. Jesus lived in a home much like ours. He would have lived in one that was similar in that he had his family with him, but actually it was an L-shaped room, just one room that everyone was in, and it was only 1 story tall. There were no windows in it, just holes that were the windows, no double glazing. And in a lot of the homes there would be outside steps, and the family would go up the steps and they would sleep on the top in the summer so that they had the fresh, cool air for them. In some of the places, animals would live in the middle part of the house, and you would have the cooking area at one end and the sleeping area at the other. This is the kind of home that Jesus lived in, a home where it was the mother's responsibility to teach at home about the things of God. When Jesus went into his ministry at about the age of 30, we don't know exactly where he lived. In fact, the Bible passage says this.
Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Luke 9:58, Matthew 8:20.
Our Bible reading for today is from John chapter 14, verse 1 to 6. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I'm going, Thomas said to him. Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered. I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
In this passage, Jesus says that he is our way to our eternal home, that he has built for us, and he will come back to take us to be with him. And we have free will as to whether we choose to do that or not. I'm a follower of Jesus. I've said yes to him. It's not because I'm brilliant, but I know that he's going to come back on the day I breathe my last here and take me to be with him in heaven. This is a passage that I have never preached on in 22 years of being a Baptist minister, until I preached on it a few months ago in our I Am series from John's Gospel in one of our services here. But I have preached on it so many times at funerals. I give people options on some various Bible passages that they'd like me to preach from, and more often than not, they choose this passage because people want to know that they have the security of an eternal home with Jesus, that their loved one that they're saying goodbye to, that they will be at home with Jesus. This is the old farmer who each morning washed his hands before leaving the house. then stepped outside to pick up a handful of soil and rub it over his hands before starting to work. When his new young farmhand asked about the curious logic of this practice, he replied, "Don't you silly boys understand anything? Inside the house it's dirt, outside it's earth. You take it off inside to eat and be with your family. You put it on outside to work and be with your animals." This farmer knew the importance of home. I hope and pray he also knew the importance of our eternal home.
Do we understand the importance of our homes?
That they are the dwelling place of Jesus.
I wonder, if we welcome Jesus into our homes, will we get a foretaste of our eternal home with him when we go to heaven? Maybe if we consciously welcome Jesus into our homes, they will become holy places, as holy as any other place that we think is holy. Our homes can be transformed into a place where Jesus lives. Bruce Springsteen is one of my favourite musical performers, and before the live version of The River he tells a story about growing up, basically about how he didn't get on with his dad and he would always stay out at night. He says, "I remember I got into a motorcycle accident once and I was laid up in bed and he had a barber come in and cut my hair. His hair was really long, and then I can remember telling him that I hated him and I would never ever forget it. And he used to tell me, 'Man, I can't wait till the army gets you. When the army gets you, they're going to make a man out of you. They're going to cut all that hair off and then make a man out of you.'" And this was, I guess, 68, when there were lots of guys from my neighbourhood going to Vietnam. I remember the drummer in my first band coming over to my house with his Marine uniform on, saying that he was going and that he didn't know where it was. And a lot of guys went, and a lot of guys didn't come back. And a lot that came back weren't the same anymore. I remember the day I got my draft notice. I hid it from my folks, and 3 days before my physical, me and my friends went out and we stayed up all night and we got on the bus to go that morning. And man, we were all so scared, and I went and I failed and I came home. I remember coming home after I'd been gone for 3 days and walking in the kitchen, and my mother and father were sitting there, and my dad said, "Where you been?" I said, "I went to take my physical." He said, "What happened?" I said, "They didn't take me." And he said, "That's good." Homes are complicated. Jesus grew up in one. Bruce Springsteen's was a troubled one that was transformed in that brief holy moment of grace when his dad was actually pleased that he didn't end up going to war in Vietnam. Friends, why don't we live as if Jesus lives with us in our homes? Why don't we believe that? And maybe we'll get a taste of our eternal home as we live with Jesus at the table, at the chopping board, in the study, wherever it may be. Homes. When we filmed that one, Mark Bacon, who filmed it, and I want to thank him and Dan Potter and Darren Barden, who filmed so much. For him to edit that together takes about 3.5 hours. But when we filmed that one, I said to Mark, "I've spoken with Joe and I've got very clear instructions. We can film in the kitchen there, we can film at the dining room table there, and we can film in the library area." And we had a bit of a mess, like all families do, on one of our sides down from the kitchen, and Mark was holding his camera because that's what he films on, and he pointed towards that bit and he said, "Don't we really want to film there, because that's what real homes look like, isn't it?" And I said to him, "Would Alison," that's his wife, "would Alison let you film that?" And he just went. He didn't even say anything. He was like, "Fair point." But we spend so much time and energy, don't we, trying to look clean and tidy and together. And I get that, that's right. We've all got that room in our houses where we cram stuff when guests are coming, even cram children in there by mistake, and then we realise that they're there and have to drag stuff out and get them out as well. I just sense that God might be saying to some of us, you don't have to be neat and tidy with me. Because I know you. I know the state of your home, your physical home and the spiritual home in which the Holy Spirit dwells within you. You can bring all of it to me, and I love you, and I will continue working with you to see your life being transformed. Friends, we don't need to put on a show for God. And maybe we'd be a bit healthier and happier if we didn't feel we needed to put a show on for one another as well.